On the next Fair Play, the happy sound of wedding bells.
If you have an open chequebook, there's so much that you can do.
The approximate cost of her wedding was probably in around £25,000.
Progress or death knell for seaside towns.
Developers came in one weekend and uprooted them with the... I'm sorry, I'm quite tearful about this.
And how phone masts aren't giving everyone a voice.
No way of making a proper representation to the company.
That's Fair Play, Monday at 7 on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, the news with Peter Sissons and Karen Patterson. It's 10 o'clock.
America reveals its special forces are in combat, killing the Taliban. They claim bin Laden's number 2 has been killed by US bombs. And Taliban fighters are said to be fleeing their southern stronghold. Sarah Payne's murder, the one in a billion forensic clue. Blair meets his war cabinet, but a famous former minister says he's killed off cabinet government.
And the news in Northern Ireland. Bloody Sunday, families' anger over judge's ruling soldiers shouldn't give evidence in Londonderry. And loyalists are blamed for a murder attempt on a man on his way to work.
Good evening. American officials scarcely concealed their jubilation today at the way they feel the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda terrorists are now on the run. They claim they've killed Osama bin Laden's principal lieutenant, and the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld told reporters that US special forces were now killing Taliban and Al-Qaeda fighters in southern Afghanistan. Washington is more cautious about other reports that the Taliban are on the brink of another humiliation, taking to the hills after being forced out of Kandahar, their southern spiritual base. From Washington, Gavin Hewitt reports.
Mohammed Artiv was one of Osama bin Laden's closest lieutenants. It's believed he was killed during a bomb attack 2 days ago. If confirmed, this would be a major blow against the Al-Qaeda network. He was regarded as Osama bin Laden's heir apparent. Here he was with him at the marriage of his daughter to Osama bin Laden's son. Intelligence sources in America identify Mohammed Artiv as the main planner behind the attacks on the World Trade Center.
Osama bin Laden no longer has a principal assistant that he has been counting on for developing military or terrorist operations.
America believes the second in command of the Al-Qaeda network has been removed, but so far they haven't been close to finding Osama bin Laden. New details emerge today of what is developing into a giant manhunt for Osama bin Laden. The American Defense Secretary confirmed that hundreds of American special forces are not just on the ground in southern Afghanistan, but are now engaged in combat. All this was revealed by Donald Rumsfeld during a visit to a naval training center. He said that the special forces were involved in close infighting with the Taliban near the city of Kandahar.
They're looking for information, they're interdicting roads, they're killing Taliban that won't surrender and Al-Qaeda that are trying to move from one place to another.
And reflecting the optimistic mood in Washington, the Defense Secretary wanted to show off pictures of American special forces in action.
The ones in the light camouflage garb are in fact American special forces.
On horseback.
On horseback in Afghanistan.
One role played by the American special forces, interrogating captured Taliban troops. Pressure continued today with further bombing of Kandahar, as these pictures from Al Jazeera show. One report from Afghanistan says that the Taliban leader, Mullah Mohammed Omar, has agreed to withdraw from the city. If that happens, the Americans hope demoralized Taliban fighters might deliver vital information on the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Washington.
Well, for more on the situation in Kandahar, Matt Fry joins us from Quetta, near the southern Afghan border. Matt, how reliable are the reports that the Taliban are quitting Kandahar?
Good evening, Peter. Well, I'm slightly putting my head on the block here, but I think this announcement by Mullah Omar does have the ring of truth about it. First of all, it comes from the Afghan Islamic press. That is the mouthpiece of the Taliban, and they're very unlikely to make something as humiliating as this up. Secondly, there's quite a lot of detail in the announcement. It says that Mullah Omar and his troops will quit Kandahar in the next 24 hours. It mentions the names of 2 Pashtun tribal leaders, both former Mujahideen fighters against the Soviets, who've been handed the keys to this pummeled city by the Taliban leadership. Now, one of those leaders is actually known to us. He is linked to a tribal group here that we've been speaking to. They claim success for these successful diplomatic negotiations, as they call them. And the third reason why I think this is reliable is that we've actually heard eyewitness accounts from the Kandahar region of Taliban fighters already heading into the hills. Matt Fry, thank you. British and American troops have secured the key Bagram air base near the Afghan capital, Kabul. An advance party of about 100 commandos, plus men from the elite Special Boat Service, are preparing the airfield for aid flights and for possible military operations. Thousands of British paras and commandos could begin flying to Bagram over the weekend. From Kabul, John Simpson reports.
A Russian aircraft chartered from Iran brings in equipment for British troops in Afghanistan. They arrived yesterday evening, or perhaps even before, but details of their deployment here are as rare as glimpses of the men themselves. Their mission, at least, is clear. It's to secure Bagram Airport, install radar and communications, clear it of mines, and repair the runway to allow aid to be flown in the quantities Afghanistan desperately needs. But there's been confusion about their mission, and even quite senior figures in the Northern Alliance are complaining that they weren't consulted before the British troops arrived. Ordinary Afghans suspect the whole motivation behind their mission.
I think it's not a good news for us that the British soldier came to Afghanistan, because we have a lot of soldiers in Afghanistan, and all of our soldiers ready to beat Osama bin Laden, to capture him, and also to destroy him.
That kind of misunderstanding doesn't help the job the British are here to do. The area around Bagram is by no means untypical of the destruction this country has suffered in 20 years of war. It badly needs help. The Taliban only added to the misery, and their crimes are still coming to light.
Come in.
We went to a prison in Kabul where women had been held for crimes such as showing their face by accident in public. The man now in charge explained that virtually all the younger women had been taken away by Taliban soldiers when they escaped from Kabul earlier this week. The women's laundry still hangs on the line, but whether they themselves are alive or dead, and exactly why they were kidnapped, is still unknown. Sorting out all these problems requires immediate help from the outside world. One of the reasons for all the disasters here is the fact that the West forgot about Afghanistan after the Soviet withdrawal of 1989. If it forgets once more, this country could quickly find itself in trouble all over again. John Simpson, BBC News, Kabul.
With Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces in retreat, a number of the training bases they set up have now been abandoned. Our special correspondent Ben Brown has been to 2 of them. Darunta, one of the largest in the hills to the west of Jalalabad, was reportedly used for chemical weapons training. The second camp, Farmhada, was based to 600 members of Al-Qaeda.
Just a few miles from Jalalabad, we came across what is left of one of the training camps run by the Al-Qaeda terrorist network. The deep craters show just how heavily the Americans bombed it. We were told hundreds of Arab fighters lived here in the Farmhada complex that's packed with armoured vehicles. Osama bin Laden used it as a key base from 1998 onwards. The camp is now in the hands of anti-Taliban troops. They gave us a guided tour. You have to be careful where you walk around here. Unexploded American cluster bombs litter the ground. They'll be a hazard in Afghanistan for months, maybe years to come. When the Taliban were still in power, the only pictures of bomb sites they wanted the world to see were those where there had been civilian casualties. But this is the other side of the coin. This was most definitely a military target. There were literally dozens of tanks and armoured personnel carriers here. What we haven't found are any bodies. But we've been told many Arab fighters did die in this camp. Those who survived the American onslaught here fled and carried their dead away with them. What's interesting is that while some of this heavy armour has been obliterated, other parts of it remain unscathed. If the Americans were trying to destroy all this hardware, then they failed, even after weeks of bombing. Next, we moved on to another Al-Qaeda camp called Darontar. No question the terrorists were training here. It's full of manuals on how to kill. Diagrams explain how a pillion passenger on a motorbike should shoot his victim. At an angle of 30 degrees, it says, the mathematics of murder. Also here, box loads of chemicals. Osama bin Laden has claimed to have chemical and even nuclear weapons. This, though, looked much cruder than that, a place for manufacturing ordinary explosives. The Taliban have been replaced here by new gunmen and new warlords, arguing among themselves now about who's in charge. But at least the Taliban have gone, and so has the terror they imposed on Jalalabad. Welcome to the Department for the Promotion of Virtue and Prohibition of Vice, the religious police, in other words, who confiscated cassette tapes and threw their owners into jail for daring to listen to music. They carried out raids on people's homes to seize television aerials and satellite dishes. TV was also banned under the Taliban. And these are the leather straps used to whip wrongdoers. 100 lashes, not uncommon. The Taliban terror may be over, but memories of it will long haunt this city. Ben Brown, BBC News, Jalalabad.
Well, for the latest on the coalition strategy in Afghanistan, Gavin Hewitt is in Washington and Bridget Kendall at the Foreign Office. Gavin, first, the Americans seem cock-a-hoop today at military success. But do you get the impression they've taken their eye off the massive problem of giving Afghanistan a new government?
Well, Peter, you're quite right. There's real satisfaction here about how events on the ground are unfolding. And the priority remains completing the war aims, smashing the Al-Qaeda network and, if possible, going after Osama bin Laden. But there's far less emphasis here on what is to follow in Afghanistan. There isn't any agreement, for instance, on the size and shape of any peacekeeping force. And in any event, the Americans have made it clear they're not going to be part of that, or unlikely to be part of it. The focus very much remains on seeking out those people they hold responsible for the attacks on the World Trade Center. And there's not really much discussion going on here beyond that.
Gavin Hewitt in Washington, thank you. Bridget Kendall at the Foreign Office. Shoulder to shoulder was the key word, but are we seeing eye to eye with America now as things go on about what happens next?
Well, I don't think there's disagreement, Peter, but I do think there's a difference of emphasis. And if you're seeing jubilation in Washington, what I'm picking up here in London is anxiety and, in fact, a considerable degree of frustration. But it's not frustration with the United States. It's with the United Nations and the slow pace of its leadership in the diplomacy over Afghanistan. The idea that the UN Special Envoy, Mr. Brahimi, is sitting in New York trying to get through by satellite phone to warlords in Afghanistan to ask them perhaps if they'd come to a conference on the country's future in the United Arab Emirates or Vienna or Kazakhstan next week just doesn't seem real. When you talk to British diplomats, they're saying we've got to do whatever it takes to get something going. And I think there's a feeling here that there ought to be face-to-face meetings. But that, too, is problematic. And I think here you can see the securing of Bagram Airport by US and UK troops is also important for the diplomacy. There's a UN special envoy who's trying to fly into Kabul. So far, it's not been secure enough for him. British diplomats want to come in this weekend. So does a Russian delegation. I think you're going to see a lot more diplomats coming into Kabul to talk to the Northern Alliance eye to eye.
Bridget Kendall, thank you. And Gavin Hewitt in Washington too. Here, the jury in the trial of Roy Whiting, the man accused of killing the schoolgirl Sarah Payne, has heard how a strand of her hair was discovered on a sweatshirt found in his van. The prosecution at Lewis Crown Court said the chances of the hair not belonging to the 8-year-old were 1,000,000,000 to 1. Roy Whiting, who's 42, denies kidnapping and murdering Sarah in July last year.
Sarah and Michael Payne came to court knowing they would hear graphic detail of their daughter's last moments. After a false start yesterday when the jury had to be dismissed, the trial finally got underway today. The prosecutor, Timothy Langdale, told the court forensics were at the centre of the case, the single most important item being one of Sarah Payne's hairs. The hair was found on a sweatshirt with Roy Whiting's DNA on it in the back of Roy Whiting's van. One like it was used in this police reconstruction by the field near Littlehampton, where she was last seen in July 2000. In court, Mr. Langdale made the link even clearer, saying the chances of the hair belonging to anybody other than Sarah Payne was 1 in a billion. And Mr. Langdale went on to say there was an unanswerable case that Sarah Payne was in the back of Roy Whiting's van. A man, he said, who seized her, killed her, and buried her body. Later, he asked the jury who knows whether Sarah Payne resisted, struggled, or screamed when she was taken. But she was killed so she wouldn't live to tell the tale of her abduction. Sarah Payne is due in the witness box on Monday, followed by her son Lee, the last person, apart from the murderer, to see Sarah Payne alive. Roy Whiting was driven away tonight, having already denied any involvement in Sarah's disappearance or death. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News, Lewis.
Primrose Shipman, the wife of Britain's biggest serial killer, the former Greater Manchester GP Harold Shipman, has said she believes he is an innocent man. Mrs. Shipman was giving evidence at the inquiry into the extent of her husband's involvement in the deaths of another 300 of his former patients.
Right, come on, let the car through. She arrived at the inquiry a reluctant witness. Hidden in the back seat, Primrose Shipman, wife of the most prolific serial killer this country has known, was being forced to speak publicly for the first time today. At the outset, the inquiry chairman, Dame Janet Smith, said the Attorney General had given an undertaking that neither Mrs. Shipman nor her husband would be prosecuted on the basis of the evidence she gave. But questioned by counsel to the inquiry, Caroline Swift QC, it soon became clear Mrs. Shipman was not going to shed much light on what happened to her husband's patients. Repeatedly, she said she could not recall events, even when she'd been present. She was asked about the death of Irene Chapman in 1998. On the death certificate, Dr. Shipman said he and his wife had been with the patient at her home when she died. Today, Primrose Shipman said she only went into the house after Mrs. Chapman had passed away. Mrs. Shipman was also asked about jewellery, which was said to have disappeared from the house. She was asked, "Did you remove any rings from the house?" She said no. She was then asked, "Did your husband, to your knowledge, take any rings?" Again, she said no. Outside, relatives who suspect the former GP may have killed their loved ones were unimpressed by Primrose Shipman's lack of memory.
What did you expect her to remember that she did not remember?
I expected her to remember that she sat with a dead woman while their family turned up, and the position the woman was in, and what room she was in, and what the family had said, and what her husband had said to her. You don't forget things like that.
Mrs. Shipman attended every day of her husband's trial, and today she remained the loyal wife. Asked if she still believed that he was innocent, she replied firmly, yes. Primrose Shipman never wanted to be here. She's never acknowledged her husband's crimes, and this almost certainly is her last word on the subject. The inquiry and the relatives of those who died will now have to rely on others to establish the true extent of Harold Shipman's murderous activities. Neil Dixon, BBC News, at the Shipman inquiry in Manchester.
American investigators say they're considering the possibility that air turbulence from another plane may have contributed to the crash of an American Airlines jet over New York on Monday, in which the tail fin sheared off. Civil aviation authorities in Britain, the United States and France have also ordered the inspection of the tail fins of all Airbus 300s as a precaution. Soldiers called to give evidence at the Bloody Sunday inquiry in Londonderry won't have to testify in person. The High Court accepted their argument that travelling to Northern Ireland left them in danger of reprisal attacks. The families of those who died say they're appalled. Merseyside police have arrested a district judge and 6 magistrates' court clerks over allegations of corruption. A local solicitor who's represented several famous footballers has also been arrested. The investigation is understood to be looking at allegations of money laundering and fraud. Police are continuing to search a farm near Leeds as part of an investigation into bomb attacks in Britain. Detectives questioning 6 people being held under anti-terrorist laws have been given permission to hold them until Monday afternoon. Scotland Yard has warned there's a threat of further terrorist attacks between now and Christmas.
Tonight, the inch-by-inch search for evidence goes on. The farm is still sealed off and various items have been removed. The search followed a tip-off from anti-terrorist officers in London.
We need to concentrate on that one site, and that's probably going to take us a few days actually to do it thoroughly. We are looking for evidence that can link people to particular crimes, and we're going to do everything we can to assist the Metropolitan Police in that.
Security sources say the farm may have been used to mix and store homemade explosives. There was a fear this car was booby-trapped. Army bomb disposal experts blew it up, one of several controlled explosions. The search followed the emergence of new information after raids yesterday in Liverpool and London. Local people in West Yorkshire say 3 men, 2 with Irish accents, lived on the farm.
I've actually seen men coming and going in different cars all the time, day and night. Sometimes they keep you awake because there's been wheel spinning coming out of the drive.
What do you make of all this?
I'm astonished, really. A little backwater village like ours, where everything is peaceful, and suddenly this crops up.
Several homes have been evacuated for a second night, with people gathering in the community centre. Meanwhile, a search continues at this house in North London after yesterday's arrests. The police are still questioning 6 men about the real IRA's bombing campaign in England. This is the biggest breakthrough they've had. Anti-terrorist officers will continue to search the farm here and the house in London through the night looking for evidence. They know even if they do manage to break one real IRA cell, there could still be others. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News, West Yorkshire.
The former cabinet minister Mo Mowlam has accused Tony Blair of acting more like an American president than a prime minister. In a BBC programme to be shown tomorrow, she says he's guilty of killing effective cabinet government. She also claims that what she called the unhappy relationship between Mr Blair and the Chancellor Gordon Brown was crippling to the government.
Right, Jack, why don't you start us off with the current diplomatic situation?
The War Cabinet meeting yesterday after the fall of Kabul, the first time a War Cabinet has ever been filmed. It's made up of a handful of senior ministers and military chiefs and excludes the bulk of the Cabinet. Tony Blair has frequently been criticised for running a presidential style of government. Now a former Cabinet colleague has weighed in.
I think there is a War Cabinet which isn't Cabinet government. I mean, they're treating Cabinet as if it's irrelevant, as if it doesn't work, and it probably isn't working. Because I think Tony's acting more like a president than a prime minister. And in that situation, the cabinet itself is dead. It doesn't have a function to play.
But the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott dismisses her claim with characteristic pithiness.
She's daft.
Tony Blair has always laughed off rumours of a rift with the Chancellor Gordon Brown. But when Mo Mowlam is asked about their relationship, she confirms it's troubled.
When you have 2 people that aren't working together, and that's the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, it doesn't lead to positive, easy decision-making. You know there's a battle going on, and people support or people go to one side or the other, and I think that is just crippling for a government.
And is that what was happening with Gordon Brown and Tony Blair?
Well, they were not happy.
Mo Mowlam's revelations and criticisms aren't new, but they are damaging because they come from such a senior figure, a former cabinet insider, and they'll add grist to the mill of those who think this government is too much of a one-man band. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Downing Street.
And you can see Michael Cockrell's report, Cabinet Confidential, tomorrow evening at 7:10 on BBC Two. The price of petrol could be about to fall further. Crude oil prices are now at their lowest levels for more than 2 years as demand falls in a slowing world economy. The Arab-dominated OPEC states have also failed to reach an agreement with Russia over cutting production. Our economics editor Evan Davis reports from one of OPEC's members, the Gulf state of Qatar.
Welcome to a country where petrol is 13p a litre. As oil almost grows on trees here, there's no petrol tax. Indeed, there's almost no tax of any kind. But even in Britain, petrol prices are falling as the world oil price takes a dive. Cheap oil helps the world economy. So isn't that what we want? Not if you're the oil minister here.
We believe very strongly that a reasonable price for consumers and producers is the best way. I cannot solve your problem and create my own problem. We have to work together.
Oil and gas make Qatar what it is. This gas terminal accounts for a quarter of the economy. But energy is a tough business. The income is unstable. The solution was OPEC, a cartel of big oil producers, to control the price. But it doesn't appear to be working. If OPEC members had total control of the energy market, the price of oil would be $25 a barrel. They don't, and it isn't. In fact, OPEC members can barely control themselves. They often produce more than they're meant to. And if they don't, there are countries outside OPEC who certainly will. OPEC is only 40% of the market now. Russia is outside, an especially big producer. And as OPEC is unable to huff and puff the oil price up, it's trying to fight back by threatening a damaging price war against its rivals.
OPEC alone cannot, in the future, to try to protect itself. And this is a clear message. We told them, do not force us to find ourselves in a war price.
A war on price? Bad news for oil producers, but good news if you want cheaper petrol. It won't be 13p a litre, but enjoy it while you can. Evan Davis, BBC News, Qatar.
It's nearly 26 minutes past 10. I'll be back a little later with an update on the day's headlines. But now we join our news teams across the United Kingdom.
Welcome to Newsline. The families of those killed on Bloody Sunday say they're bitterly disappointed but not surprised that soldiers won't have to travel to Londonderry to give evidence to the Savile inquiry. The High Court in London today ruled it was unfair to suggest the soldiers haven't reasonable fears for their safety. Colette Maguire reports.
This ruling comes after 36 former and serving soldiers challenged the Bloody Sunday inquiry's decision to compel them to give evidence in Derry. Lord Justice Rose and Mr Justice Sullivan said it was unfair to the military witnesses to suggest that they have no reasonable fears for their safety. Both judges said that the recent history of attacks in Northern Ireland showed that despite intensive security precautions, terrorist activity put soldiers' lives at risk. On the issue of hearing the soldiers' evidence in England, both judges dismissed suggestions that such a move would destroy confidence in the inquiry.